Continuing the list of illustrations, tell whom, page 168. In determining the antiquity of a name which is found attached to a certain locality, it is sometimes needful to follow it through several changes it may have undergone in passing from one language to another. In this archaeological skill, Dr. Robinson was especially noted and successful, having recovered hundreds of Bible names from the modern Arabic titles to places noted in the scriptures. W. M. Thompson was the first to discover the name of Capernaum in the Arabic Tel Hum. He says, whom is the last syllable of Kefer Nahum, as it was anciently spelled. And it's a very common mode of curtailing old names to retain only the final syllable. Well, Kefer would be Keper. That whom thing, yeah, that doesn't really make sense as an argument. Keper Naum. It's almost exactly go over, but thus we have Zib for Aksib and Fik for Afka, etc. In this instance, Kefer has been changed to tell why. A deserted, no. A deserted site is generally named Tel, but not Kefer, which is applied to a village. And when Capernaum became a heap of rubbish, it would be quite natural for the Arabs to drop the Kefer and call it simply Tel Hum. See Capernaum. Scribes and Books, page 180. Cedars, page 181. There are very few remains of the ancient forests on the mountains of Syria, and the cedars are the most noble specimens now standing. On the slopes of the Lebanon range, there are several groves of the ancient cedars, one of which is near the Beirut-Damascus carriage road, and is quite easy of access to travelers who have brought away thousands of the cones, which are nearly 3 inches long by 2 inches diameter, and one especially. Robert Morris, LL.D. in 1868, distributed several thousands among Sunday school scholars as incentives to a study of the natural history of Palestine. The largest cedars are found near the highest summit of Lebanon, Dor el Kodib, close to the limit of perpetual snow. Bottles, page 194. There are several kinds of bottles used in the East, made of skins, earth, glass, and of metal. The skins are of various sizes, as they are taken from rabbits, kids, sheep, cows, holding from 1 gallon to 30 or 40. These are usually prepared with the hair turned inside, and so are likely to give the water or wine a peculiar flavor. The skin bottles are the kind alluded to in the scriptures, where new bottles are recommended for strength, and they are also used in Spain now as well as in Palestine and other eastern countries. The bottles of glass do not differ from ours, except that they are very singular forms. Those found in tombs and in ancient ruins are, without doubt, veritable antiquities, and have the well-known appearance of old, time-worn, decayed glass. Earthen bottles or jars and pitchers are always finely formed and often elegantly ornamented with figures and colors. They are in constant use, as pails are with us, and are seen in the hands, are on the heads of the women, morning and evening at the wells, are on the way to and from. Metals, especially copper and bronze, were used for bottles and cups, and most of the smaller vessels, such as are made of tin, are tinned iron with us. In the East, are made of copper or brass. The ancients did not make brass, but bronze. The ancient pieces of money are bronze, as also many articles such as knives, swords, handles, dishes, bowls, etc. And this compound was of copper and tin. The union of copper and zinc forming brass being a modern invention. Now, haven't they shown that some people in ancient times actually did form brass? And certain metal compounds were made in ancient times that people don't nowadays. But Ancient Bottles, page 197. Pool of Hezekiah, page 199. This pool is cut in the solid rock and is of great antiquity, and is the work of Hezekiah, king of Judah, who made a pool and a conduit, and brought water into the city, and also stopped the upper watercourse of Gahan, and brought it straight down to the west side of the city of David. Jerusalem is chiefly dependent on the rains for its supply of water, and every house has under it one or more cisterns. The Hezekiah pool is 250 feet long, 150 wide, and capable of holding millions of gallons of water, which is used to supply several bathhouses. The pool is enclosed by houses on every side, one of which is a large hotel kept by Europeans. The question of where the pool of Bethesda was, and Bethesda was, and which ruin or present pool is the true site. Well, where is it? Vrindavan. You go to Vrindavan, and there's 24 places where the person called Chaitanya was said to have bathed, and are any of them the authentic site? A lot more likely than some of the, here's something 6,000 years ago, and here's all the places where he, If any now remains, is one of the unsettled problems in the map of Jerusalem. Among the sites offered is the great pool, or reservoir, north of the temple site, and now called the Pool of Bethesda, near the St. Stephen Gate, and which has been lined with masonry and cemented for holding water, although it is now dry, 360 feet long, 130 wide, and 75 deep. Another, called by Eusebius and the Bordeaux Pilgrim, the Twin Poles, which has been lately found at the northwest angle of the temple area. A large reservoir, 165 feet long by 48 wide, with a dividing wall running lengthwise, and both sides arched over, and now built over. The water is used by the convent of the Sisters of Sion. The Arch of Ekahomo, this is the man, is near the place. Mr. Williams, Holy City, page 484, thinks that the Bethesda pool was near to the St. Anne Church, and now almost completely destroyed. Chancellor Crosby selects the Virgin Fountain, which is now outside the city walls, as the true Bethesda. Our text offers the Hezekiah pool, which answers many, if not all, of the requirements of the case. The Sea of Galilee, page 241. The sea is pear-shaped, the large end at the north, 6 and 3/4 mile wide and 12 1/4 long. The surface is between 600 and 700 feet below the ocean level. The shores are on all sides quite regular in outline, but the hills are indented into many little bays or hollows, some of which are small plains filled with vegetation and very beautiful. The hills are almost always gently sloping and might be cultivated from bottom to top. The soil is rich, being formed on limestone. Basalt has flowed over the tops of the hills from 3 sources: Kurun Hatin, El Jish, beyond Safed, and in the Jowlan. The beach is paved with minute white broken shells and skirted in many places with oleanders and other flowering shrubs. The hills have a general tint of purplish brown, broken in some places by gray rocks or lines of foliage. The east shore is 2,000 feet high, quite uniform in height along the summit of the ridge, but cut down by several deep ravines with very few scattering trees and no forests. On the west, the banks are about the same height, but the uniform level is relieved by the outlines of Tabor and Hutton, which rise into the sky in the distance. Northward, the outline is still more varied by the heights of Safed, the plain of Gennesaret, and the snow-capped Hermon. Towards the south, the view is lost in the dim, hazy heat of the Kor, with Mount Gilboa and Little Hermon on the west side of the Jordan, and Gilead on the east. The locality of the Dead Sea can be made out by the level haze in the distant horizon in the morning near the sunset. The Jordan River enters the western shore of the north end and colors the water for nearly a mile with its muddy current and passes out at the south end, a pure, bright stream. The water of the sea is in some places 250 feet deep and is clear, bright, and sweet to the taste, except near salt springs. The climate is almost tropical, ice or frost never approaching. Palms and all kinds of trees and vegetables grow in luxuriance, and indigo is cultivated. The summer heat is high, but the cool breezes of the morning and evening relieve its oppressiveness. The waters are well stocked with many kinds of fish, some of which are much prized for their flavor. Several warm springs pour their waters into the ocean, which were increased in volume and temperature by the earthquake of 1837. The most noted of the hot springs are those near Tiberias, where there are bathhouses of stone quite well built. Josephus speaks of this place as a mouse near Tiberias. It was an ancient and fortified town of Naphtali, as mentioned in the book of Joshua, 1935. In the time of Jesus, there were 9 cities, or cities and villages, around the shores of this lake, only 1 or 2 of which now remain: Tiberias and Magdala. All the others are in ruins, and even so far destroyed as to be almost entirely lost. The sea has several names, such as Galilee, from the district in the Roman period, Chinnereth, from a city which stood at or near the present Tiberias, Tiberias, from the city which was named in honor of Tiberius, emperor of Rome, and Gennesaret, from the plain of that name on its northwest border. Lampstand, page 240. The recent exploration in Palestine has found many articles of domestic use, such as bottles, jugs, lamps, a pottery, and some articles of copper, as rings and ornaments, daggers, heads of so-called deities, and serpents. And this lampstand, which was found in a chamber south of the Haram area. Some of these articles were finely wrought, beautifully ornamented, beautifully enameled, or delicately inlaid. There were also a few articles of shell, ivory, and wood carvings, such as boxes and cases for the toilet, and objects of luxury. You know, that they mean like the soaps and whatnot that a person would keep in their bathroom. I don't think they mean, their wiping sponge or whatever they're using. Because I think in that part of the world, under Rome, they tended to use a sponge. Mount of Beatitudes, Karun Hatin. Well, I mean, they tended to use other there, but that was considered the luxury thing. Mount of Beatitudes, Karun Hatin, page 242. Almost unanimous consent locates the Sermon on the Mount on this mountain, which rises high above the plain of Ptauf, Issachar, a little more than halfway between Nazareth and the Sea of Galilee. Its Arabic name, Karun Hatin, Horns of Hatin, describes its appearance from a distance, for it is marked by sharp peaks at each end, especially as seen from the south. The view given in the engraving is from the opposite side of the plain, on the north, where the horns or peaks are not so apparent. The Hebrew word for horn, Karen, but is it Qarn, like in the book of Daniel? The Zulqarn, it's almost identical. It is the most prominent height on the west of the Sea of Galilee, and the plain at its northern foot is very easily reached from the coastal towns, while from the plain to the summit it is but a few minutes' walk. There is a level place on the top, as described in the text, and a higher standing place on the horns. It is distinctly the mountain of the whole region, no other being comparable to it in prominence. The last great battle between the Crusaders and the Saracens took place on and around this mountain. On the 5th of July, 1187, the noble army of Knights Templars, numbering 2,000 with 8,000 squires, men at arms, and so on, formed their line of battle against the army of Saladin. Now, what exactly does Saracen mean? I forget. The contest was carried on through several days until the remnant of the kings and their followers, and led by the king Guy of Lusignan, Reynold of Chatillon, the Grand Master, the Bishop of Leighton, bearing the relic of the True Cross, and Humphrey of Turon, were either killed or made prisoners. There has been no Christian power or ruler in Palestine from that day to this. Because, they may have been noble in a power sense, but not noble in a, Naughton and Little Hermon in page 310. The village of Naughton is poorly built, of about 20 huts on a rocky ridge, a spur from Little Hermon, the hill Mora, and near the watershed between the Jordan and the Mediterranean. The ruins of an ancient city lie around the village, and there are cave sepulchres in the steep side hill east of the site, and also on the west. The expedition of Gideon and his 300 men, with lamps and pitchers and trumpets associated with this vicinity. For the plain in front of Leighton is that on which the Midianites were camped. Tyre, page 316, was built both on an island. You see how it's smudged. So, and on the main line opposite, the island being very strongly fortified. Alexander found it necessary to build a causeway out into the island during his siege of the city, and the work still remains joining the island to the shore. The populace in the time of Christ, well, by Christ I mean the Christian one, of course, was nearly equal to that of Jerusalem. Cassius, a Christian bishop of Tyre, was at the council of Caesarea. William of Tyre was archbishop in the time of the Crusades, 1124, and wrote in his history an account of the wealth, strength, and manufactures of the city, among which glass and sugar are mentioned as articles of great value in trade. The Christian army abandoned the place on the eve of June the 17th, 1194. The Saracens took possession the next morning and have held it ever since. The ancient strength and wealth have disappeared, and its present condition of silence and desolation as compared to its former activity and magnificence is a most complete fulfillment of prophecy. Now, you can't really deny the power of the crusading Europeans, but the crusading Europeans are trying to force their way on others. They were trying to acquire great wealth, and other people were just trying to defend themselves and live their own lives, and that can come off a lot stronger. The people are going for survival and freedom, even to the point where they're, when they're outnumbered. So, one stone alone of its great sea wall is left in its original position, near the north end of the island city. It measures 6.5 feet thick by 17 feet long. The ruins have been used as a quarry, furnishing columns, capitals, panels, and wrought stones for buildings in Joppa, Acre, and Beirut, besides many fine works carried to Rome and Constantinople. The ruins of the Christian cathedral in the southeastern quarter of the modern village are still imposing and are visited by every passing pilgrim. It was about 250 by 150 feet in extent. Some of its main columns were red syenite and now lie where they fell. The most interesting objects next to the cathedral ruin are the immense fountain and remains of the aqueduct for supplying the city with water. A few days' work would repair the fountain as good as new. The water is bright and clear and flows in a large stream which is only used to turn some small mills built against the ancient walls. The largest pool or cistern is 80 feet across, octagonal, and 20 feet deep. Another is 52 by 47 and 12 deep, and the third is 52 by 36 and 16 deep. Talhum, page 319. See Talhum, page 168. Gersa, page 366. The ruins of this place are on the east side of the Sea of Galilee, on the left bank of Wadi Smak. As in the letter, but I forget what the name of the letter means. Just at the foot of the hills, having a little plain, 1/2 mile to 3/4 of a mile in width between the site and the water. The city was enclosed with a wall about 3 feet thick, and the largest ruin is of a rectangular building which was built east and west, but which cannot now be identified, either as a temple, synagogue, or church. Near the water there are a few ruined foundations and walls, which were the port of the ancient city. There is a hot spring in the hills, a mile south of the site, where the hills come close to the sea, leaving only a roadway and a little bench, and forming a steep, even slope, which may even have been the steep place mentioned in Matthew 8:28. There are no rock-hewn tombs as far as has been examined, and the two demoniacs must have lived in one that was built above ground, similar to those described at Capernaum. Herod's Mite, page 380. The farthing was the smallest coin of Herod, unless perhaps the mite or lepton was still smaller. There are mites extant of Herod. See page 589. Of brass or bronze or copper. There's also a well-known mite of Tiberius and Julius Caesar. The best idea of the value of the money that was in use in Palestine in the time of Jesus will be had from the tables of Greek coins, the lepton or mite, 2 mils, a drachma, 16 cuts. Okay, what was it? CTS? The drachm, 32 of them. Stater, 64 of them. Zina, a pound, $16. A talent, $960. The Roman coins, an ass or farthing, 15 mils. Quadrans, 3 1/4 CTS. Denarius, penny, 15 CTS. Argus, a stater, $3. A talent, $961. The Hebrew, copper or bronze weight, a gera, 1/20. So the weight 20 grains, 2 mils. 1/6, 88 grains, 3 mils. Za, a quarter, 132 grains, 4 mils. Pekah, a half, 264 grains, 8 mils. A shekel, 528 grains, 1 CT, 6 mils. A talent, 1,500 shekels, $25. The Hebrew silvers, the gera, a bean, 25 mils. A beka, divided, 25 CTS. A shekel, weight, 50 CTS. A mena, a talent, $25. That's abbreviated. A kicker, around $1,500. A talent, page 446. The Attic talent of Antiochus III was valued about 64 cents, being equal to 4 drachms, tetradrachm. And we're talking about, what, 64 cents back then or something like that? So like $50 or something. A stater, page 437. Tribute money. A stater was equal to the shekel in the New Testament time, and therefore 1 stater was the sum required for the tribute of 2 persons. The image on it was of some Greek king or emperor, and an emblematical figure with an inscription telling whose money it was, as the money of Alexander. And so at the very late, it could be 2 months' wages into taxes, which is a lot better than nowadays. It could be less. It's just, Judas money, page 414, the shekel coined by Simon R. Eliezer. Map of Galilee, Central and South, page 378, the numerous villages and sites and the many unnamed ruins of ancient towns give some idea of the dense population that inhabited Palestine in its prosperous days. Many of these sites are without names, and there are quite a number of scriptural names not identified with their sites. There are not many roads now, and probably never were more than a few great lines connected with the smaller towns by bridle paths, as is the case now, the traveler needing a guide for a journey of a few miles. Tyre, page 402, page 316. Sidon, page 427, the great Zidon of Phoenicia was built on the northern slope of the promontory, which juts northwest in the Mediterranean Sea, and is the most ancient of the country. Homer says, the large silver bowl given as the prize to the swiftest runner by Achilles was made at Sidon, according to the Iliad 23, 743. I think it's Sidon. I'm not sure about that, but in the Odyssey, I'm not sure if it's or in the Odyssey 4, 614, there is also an account of a divine work, a bowl of silver with a gold rim, the work of Hephaestus, and a gift from King Phaedimus of Sidon. He mentions the beautifully embroidered robes that were brought from there for Dramaka. And it is also noticed in the Book of Kings, 1 Kings 5:6, that skilled workmen and not traders were their special pride. While under the Persian rule, the city rose to great wealth and importance, and lived carelessly after the manner of Sidonians became a proverb. Judges 18:7. The prize in a boat race, witnessed by Xerxes at Abydos, was won by Sidonians, and in reviewing his fleet, he sat under a golden canopy in a Sidonian galley, and at the great assembly of his officers, the king of Sidon sat in the first seat. Strabo said there was the best opportunity for acquiring a knowledge of the sciences of arithmetic and astronomy, and of all other branches of philosophy. It is now called Saida. The vicinity is one great garden filled with every kind of fruit-bearing trees, nourished by streams of Lebanon. Its chief exports are silk, cotton, and nut galls. A mission station of Americans are working among 5,000 people. There are many sepulchres in the rocks at the base of the mountain east of Sidon, and also in the plain. One of the most beautiful and interesting Phoenician mountains in existence was discovered in a cave in 1855. It is a sarcophagus of a black syenite with a lid carved in human form, bandaged like a mummy, the face being bare. There is an inscription in the Phoenician language on the body, and another on the head, and on them the king of the Sidonians is mentioned, and it is said that his mother's name was Ashtoreth. The date of the inscription is assigned to the 11th century BCE. Now, people were named after divinities, but that could mean the person was a royal, and they were claiming that no, I'm a child of a goddess, I swear. be interesting to find out more of what the story about that whole thing was, right? Maybe they don't know. Gadara, page 407. This was a Greek city celebrated for the hot baths near it, and for its temples and theaters, and ruins of which may still be traced. It is 5 miles south of the Sea of Galilee, and nearly 3 from the river Hieromax, which some think was called the Jabbok. Some of the ruined tombs have rooms 10 to 20 feet square and even larger, with many small recesses in their side walls for receiving bodies. The doors are of stone, turning on stone hinges, and some still in use by the people who occupy the tombs as dwellings. There was a straight street from end to end of the city, nearly 2 miles long, with a colonnade on each side. Not a house or a column of the whole city is standing, except the Western Theater. The hot springs are in a natural basin near the river, a beautiful spot at an average of 110 degrees, smelling strongly of sulfur, and they are now used by quite a number of invalids who believe in their curative properties. The ruins of baths and houses are so many and important as to indicate that there must have been at some time a population of at least 1,000 invalids and attendants at the baths. The Eastern Theater is still quite perfect in its ground plan, although the seats are covered with rubbish and loose stones. And the Western Theater was much larger and was only about 1,000 feet from the Eastern, and is in quite a good state of preservation. Having been very strongly built, the seats are of stone, well designed, finely furnished, and scarcely show the effect of so many centuries of neglect. The entrance was by a grand stairway leading from the main street, having Corinthian columns on each side. The basalt pavement of the streets shows here and there the marks of wagon wheels, which had worn quite deep ruts in the hard stone. The Jordan Valley, Sea of Galilee, and the mountains beyond are in plain view from the brow of the hill near the city. Beth Saida, page 414. This interesting place was on the Jordan, just above its entrance to the Sea of Galilee, and there was no second Beth Saida, as has been supposed, west of Capernaum. The arguments for and against are given with much detail by W. M. Thompson, Land and Book, and by the Palestinian Exploration Jerusalem Recovered. A misunderstanding of the text made it seem necessary to find a second place of the name on the shore of the sea. The recent discovery of the Sinaitic copy of the Gospels, which gives a more correct version of the passage, has settled the question in favor of one city of the name located on the Jordan River. It may have been on both sides of the river and have been one part in Galilee and the other beyond Jordan. The ruins, although they are found on both sides of the river, do not appear equal to the requirements of the text of Josephus, in which it is described as an important city, raised to the first rank and named Julias in honor of Julia, the daughter of the Emperor Titus. Herod Philip, the Tetrarch, was buried there in a magnificent tomb, which has not yet been found. The place where the 5,000 were fed has been located in the plain of Batiha by some, and at Ain Barida near Tiberias by others. If the correction of the reading derived from the Sinaitic manuscript is the more ancient and reliable, then Ain Barida, or more correctly, Ain el Filia, Warm Springs, was the place. The corrected text reads, when therefore the boats came from Tiberias, which was nigh unto where they did also eat bread. The most ancient writers record the tradition that the locality was at Ain Berida, John 6:23. And we'll probably conclude